realfaith.org.au.
I was so thankful for every junction in our journey. God had provided the perfect person for us. I was so thankful for that audiologist who shared Cody's diagnosis in such a way that it gave us hope. And so every single point where things could have gone wrong, it was going right.
Welcome to Real Faith. Conversations about the impact faith has on our lives and the challenges we go through, helping us today and giving us hope for tomorrow. That's real people, real life, and real faith with Eric Scatterbo.
Well, today we have part 2 of our conversation with special support educator Louise Griffiths, who's sharing her life journey with us and about her experiences as a parent of a child with special needs. Last time we heard how her son, Cody, was born profoundly deaf. Today we'll hear about the impact this had on her family and that as he got older, they suspected there was something else at play. Once again, I'm chatting with Louise in our Melbourne studios.
And then I went to Deaf Baby Playgroup. Now, you don't find many playgroups around for deaf babies, but it just so happened in the area of Liverpool in Sydney in 2008, there were 5 babies born, 4 of which were profoundly deaf and a 5th one with a moderate hearing loss. So they said, let's make a playgroup. Mm-hmm. And so we all rocked up. I think all of us, except for one mum, it was our first baby. So we all turn up with our tiny babies, all with hearing aids. And if you don't fit your hearing aids properly, they squeak because air gets in. So you've got these babies coming in with squeaking hearing aids. And we had all been through the same experience of going to Westmead Children's Hospital, having the 2-hour test, being told there's a hearing loss. Most of us even had the same lady who diagnosed us.
Oh, okay.
And so
you all have this in common.
We all had the same experience, except that some of the ladies, when their baby was diagnosed as profoundly deaf, they brought in the hospital social worker. And it turns out the hospital social worker probably didn't specialise in supporting mothers with deaf babies because she would make it seem really, really terrible and what a terrible life these kids had ahead of them. That's what the ladies felt anyway. Whereas I had this really upbeat conversation where the lady's like, yep, your child's deaf. We're going to put in cochlear implants and if you just work hard, you'll get him into school. So I was like, yeah, we can so do this. Whereas a couple of the other mums was like, I don't know how we're going to get through the next 5 years.
And that was all because of the tone of the person.
How they were told. Absolutely. And I'm pretty sure my personal faith had a bit to do with it as well.
Oh, yeah.
But here we had 5 women. There was a lady from the Muslim faith again, which is a really high Muslim population in the area of Sydney which we were in. There was a Romanian Orthodox lady. There was a refugee from Bosnia and a lady also who'd come from Southeast Asia. So I was
quite a variety.
It was quite a variety, and I was the only lady who had English as a first language.
Oh, wow.
I was also the only lady who had been able to do university study in Australia. And so we made a bit of a hub, but it also meant that my Googling skills and my ability to read medical reports and to research information online meant that I became a bit of an information hub.
Oh, okay.
Which I loved. Like, that's how I dealt with the diagnosis. I just learned. I just got online and I learned everything I needed to know because for me, being armed with information means that I am ready. And so we would get together and we'd share information, we'd share what the doctors had told us and would try and make sense of what doctors had said. And then at night, Facebook had just emerged in 2008. So this was, groundbreaking technology. But I would sit on Facebook Messenger and talk with my Muslim friend about why God would allow our children to be born deaf.
Oh, so suddenly you're having interfaith conversations.
It was amazing. For about a year, we all journeyed together. But the downside is that as the kids got older and they began to walk around, and they're always assessing our kids. They're always seeing how many words they've got, how many times they can roll over, how their head's going.
Oh, you're comparing with each other?
It did my head in. Cody was a beautiful kid. He got his cochlear implant surgery. He was responding really, really well to the cochlear implants. But I did not want to hear any more about how the other baby could say 7 different words and my son still only had 2.
And at that time, you didn't know that your child had autism.
No. He was such a cute kid. Like, everyone loved Cody because he had this huge smile. We had also been the most aggressive in our response to Cody's deafness. So we got 2 cochlear implants inserted at once, which was considered quite unorthodox back in 2008. It's now standard. But, yeah, I just I didn't want to be comparing my son anymore. Yeah. So as much as I love
that sounds like that could be depressing.
It was getting really detrimental. So I pulled out of that group and then we moved churches at the same time.
Now, I wanted to go back, if we could, to the theological impact of all this. As you just said earlier, initially the congregation at the church you were going to, it kind of just rocked their theological world. But how did it impact you and your personal theology at that time?
That was also a journey in itself. I think the first time I spoke to the church about it from my perspective was in the August. So Cody was born in the January. In the August, there was a Women's Day at church. And that week, we had just got Cody's right ear switched on. So he just had his cochlear implant put on. And so I actually brought him out to the congregation. Of course, everyone's crying with joy and all that kind of thing. And Cody's got no idea what's going on. So I handed him back, and then I actually spoke about my thankfulness, that I'm so thankful for God's gift of Cody. I'm so thankful for the work of Graham Clark, who was the doctor/scientist who developed the technology.
Who's a Christian as well.
He's a Christian. Incredible man. And I was so thankful for every junction in our journey. God had provided the perfect person for us. I was so thankful for that audiologist who shared Cody's diagnosis in such a way that it gave us hope. And I was thankful for the Christian audiologist and the Christian surgeon who said to us, I love operating on ministers' kids because I know the church is praying for me. And so every single point where things could have gone wrong, it was going right. I think there's that verse about how God, smooths the pathway for us and takes us to the pastures that we need, to the green pastures. And I felt as if God's care was there all along. And so that was my first part of the journey. The next thing was the opportunities and our prayer. When you're pregnant with a baby and when the baby's first born, I don't know about other parents, but I'm like, what will they be? Will they be a doctor or a lawyer? Or it then became, when we found out he was deaf, it was, will he understand the depth of Christ's love for him? Will he be able to hear the gospel and the gospel message? And so we no longer cared about careers. We cared about who he is in Christ and whether he would understand that. And I guess also I wanted Cody to understand the kingdom purposes that allowed him to be deaf. So I was thinking about that passage in John 9 where that man who's born blind is brought to Jesus and the disciples, and they say, why is this man born blind? Was it his sin or the parents' sin? And Jesus is like, no, it's so that the God's kingdom will be revealed. Then he heals the man. And I really feel that for me as a mother, I got to reveal God's kingdom to the ladies in that playgroup that we were part of, with those deaf babies. I got to share God's kingdom with them. And then as Cody got older and I pulled away from that playgroup, I was then contacted by the Deaf Society of New South Wales and asked to mentor other mums.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
So mums who had newborn babies who were profoundly deaf, so basically they had to match the same hearing profile as Cody. At diagnosis, they'd be contacted shortly afterwards and told, yep, we've heard your baby's been diagnosed as deaf. Would you find it helpful to speak to a parent who's gone through this experience recently? So I think
And that would be you.
That would be me. So I think I mentored about 8 or 9 ladies, and I was a Christian. Like, I couldn't hide that.
Yeah.
So they got the whole picture, what it's like to have a deaf baby, and how prayer and God's kindness to us carried me through it. And we'd have, every now and then I'd get all the mums together that I'd mentored, and the available hall was, of course, the church hall. So
there you go.
It was hard to avoid the fact
So your
that I
faith
was
a part of it all.
That was a part
And
of it all.
they could see that.
Yeah, and then whenever I got asked to talk at churches, for the first few years, a kid with cochlear implants does draw attention. Not so much now because Cody's hair is getting a bit longer and he wears hats, but as a baby, every church we went to wanted to hear the story. So the John 9 sermon would come out basically, and I would give a talk on John 9 and why God allowed Cody to be deaf for God's kingdom purposes.
Which we don't always understand.
We don't. And every now and then I say to Cody, so why do you think God allowed you to be deaf? And he's beginning, like, I don't want him just to recite what I say or just recount what I've told him. But he is beginning to say, yeah, because God wants people to see how God can help people like me. And that's really, really lovely and exciting for me.
And that's a positive attitude, that there is a purpose and a reason for the reason why I am the way I am.
Yeah.
Rather than just thinking, I'm just unlucky.
That's right. And look, there have been seasons of that. Absolutely.
He's only human.
He's only human and he's only a kid. But my favourite story ever was when he was about 3 or 4 years old, and Cameron, my husband, was saying to Cody, when you get to heaven, you won't be deaf. And Cody says to Cameron, so what do I do with my ears, which is what he calls his cochlear implants? And Cameron goes, well, you won't need them. And he goes, so what do I do with them? Like, do I just leave them on the grass or something when I get to heaven? And Cameron's like, you don't need them. And he's like, but where will I leave them? Just leave them on the grass. Which is so cute because, of course, we had to train him from very young. Don't lose your $30,000 ears.
Oh, yes.
Thanks to the Australian government.
They go in and out.
There's a surgical procedure where there's internal devices, there's a computer in there, and then the external part looks like a giant hearing aid with a little coil attached that sticks to his head by a magnet and sends a signal through to his brain.
Okay, so
those bits just pull off.
So both internal and external.
Yeah. And we've lost cochlear implants in the Yarra River.
Oh, my goodness.
We thought we'd flush one down the toilet once. That's also a whole nother podcast. I'm giving you
so much material.
Information for like 10 podcasts.
Okay, well, let's just try to get through one here. Our guest today is once again Special Support Educator Louise Griffiths, who's sharing her life journey with us and about her experiences as a parent of a child with special needs. We'll hear more of her story when we return right here on Real Faith.
The Word for Today is Australia's most widely read daily devotional, designed to give you practical teaching to keep you focused on your relationship with Jesus. Read it online or subscribe to the free printed edition at thewordfortoday.com.au.
You're listening to Real Faith, conversations with real people about how God works in their lives. If you want to know more about integrating faith into your life, our website is realfaith.org.au. Just go to the website and you'll find helpful articles about the impact faith can have on your life. Once again, that's realfaith.org.au.
Welcome back. I'm Eric Scadabo, and today, once again, I'm chatting with Special Support Educator Louise Griffiths, who's sharing about her experiences as a parent of a child with special needs. As we heard, her son Cody was born profoundly deaf, and this presented some unique challenges. Now we'll hear what happened next in her life as she continues to share her story. So then you also found out a little bit more about his deafness.
Yeah, the other amazing thing about the health system in Australia, and particularly in New South Wales at the time, was that they do every test under the sun to try and work out why your child is deaf. Obviously, Cameron and I were hearing adults, so it didn't seem as though it was hereditary, but there's a heart condition that can cause deafness. That's 1 in 1 million apparently. There's Usher's syndrome that starts off with a hearing loss and then eventually leads to a vision loss. There's another form of deafness that is linked to a kidney illness. And so they really wanted to find out what was the cause. And meanwhile, I was blaming myself as well, which I think whenever anything happens to your child as a parent, you blame yourself.
No, we shouldn't.
We shouldn't, but we do.
Yeah.
And I had been a teacher right up until I was 8 months pregnant. And I had a mouse infestation in my storeroom at my school. And I remember cleaning out all the mouse poo and then putting lip balm on shortly afterwards with my fingers and then going, oh, no, I haven't washed my hands between the mouse poo and the lip balm. And so for quite a while, I thought maybe I'd given my son some sort of
infection or
disease or something from the mouse poo, because there are conditions that your child can develop while in utero.
Oh, wow. So this is all causing you guilt and everything?
There's toxoplasmosis that you can catch from a cat. And there
are a number of things to worry about if you
cyclomegalovirus.
Oh my. Okay, so knowing exactly what caused.
Because I'd researched them all, Eric, of course.
Because that's what you do.
Because I had been on Google for hours, but the day the phone call came from the deafness pediatrician, he said it was actually a genetic mutation. So the blood went off to America, came back. Cody had a mutation of the connexin 26 gene. Now, you're probably not familiar with it. I wasn't.
Nope.
But basically the mutation is carried in 1 in 20 adults or 1 in 20 people. And then the chance of 2 people with this mutation getting together and forming a child is 0.05. I think that's the mathematicians are probably out there now.
I'll just go with you on that, yeah.
Apologies to the gene specialists out there who are going, she's
But the bottom line is low odds, and you just happened to marry your husband, Cameron, who also had the same.
And there was nothing that we knew of in our family histories. Like, obviously, somewhere back in both our family lines, there are people that are deaf or have got a hearing loss that we didn't know about. So at the end of the day, there was nothing we could have done.
Right.
But
so that
also,
alleviates all that worrying you had.
Guilt,
yeah.
But also it gave such hope for the future, because they knew that with this gene, the only issue you had to worry about was deafness. That once they put the cochlear implants in, this particular condition was not linked to any other disabilities or challenges.
Okay, so that's a relief.
That's a total relief.
Yeah.
Which is why we got a bit worried when Cody was now up on his feet and walking around. He was a bit slower to get going than other kids.
So how old was he when you learned that it was genetic?
Oh, 5 months old.
Okay.
So fairly early on, and that's why we went so aggressively into the surgery, because we knew
that was the main issue.
We just had to get the hearing aids in and go for it. So when we were 1, or he was 1, we went to a new church and there was a playgroup with heaps of kids Cody's age. And so once again, there was that point of comparison. But the good thing is you could go, well, my child's deaf, so I can't compare him to the other kids. So
there you go.
That was quite handy.
Relieve stress.
So that relieved stress in a lot of ways. But we also discovered by the time Cody was 2, he had a very, very low tolerance for being around other children for extended periods of time. You know, we'd be going on a play date or whatever, and, you know, there were so many of us mums who were stay-at-home mums at this stage with kids around the same age. But by about the 2-hour mark, I would have to pull out. I'd have to say, okay, Cody, we're going home, because he began to get irritated and annoyed, and he just wasn't coping with the social interaction the way other kids were. And it was actually beginning to affect how I could do ministry. I couldn't just go to someone's house and just dump my child on the floor and say, he'll be fine for 3 hours. I had to go, right, I've got an hour and a half with you. Let's talk fast, because I have to leave before Cody says it's enough.
Yeah.
So that began to get me thinking about, wow, why does he find it so hard to hang around with other kids? And when I did catch up with the other babies with a hearing loss, they weren't finding that. They were really social bunnies. But Cody really found it hard to hang around with other kids for long periods of time. And he did like things a certain way, and he didn't really like playing by himself, but man, he loved television, really loved television. And so we were just watching this and seeing as his sister came along and she was hearing, which was a total shock to us. We were ready for a second child who would be deaf because that was easier to prepare for that. But she was hearing. But we could just see that Cody really struggled socially. And then at this church we were at, we had some wonderful friends who had a boy that was actually 12 hours younger than Cody. He was hearing. But we could just see that Cody wasn't at the same emotional maturity as this other little boy. And so
side by side you could tell.
Yeah, that just the way Cody responded, his resilience, his ability to cope with frustration, his gross motor skills, the whole picture. Although he physically looked the same, the behaviour was markedly different. And he was very, very emotional. He had meltdowns quite easily. Meltdowns are basically a response to when you're so overwhelmed, you don't know how to respond, so you cry, hit, whatever you need to do just to escape.
Yeah.
And so my dear friend at this church sent their child to primary school, but we gave Cody another year at home, wanting him to mature.
But you didn't know what was causing that.
No, we thought maybe it was the deafness. It's also kids are different.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
There is variation. So
for whatever reason, you just thought he was a little immature for his age.
Yeah. And then in a totally unexpected twist, we ended up moving to Melbourne at the end of this year where we held Cody back from school. So I think it was about 2013, 14 that we moved to Melbourne because Cameron was moving into the Presbyterian denomination. And lo and behold, it was Donvale Presbyterian.
Once again, here we go.
So here we were, very last minute, deciding to move to Melbourne. So I rang up the principal of Donvale Christian College and just said, we're coming back to Melbourne. Cody's profoundly deaf. He's got some challenges. We really need lots of support for Cody. And we can't pay the full fees. Can you help us? And their answer was, of course. And so here I am returning to the school that was my family, returning 8 years later.
That helped you out so much.
God just had it under control. So I took Cody into a class with a teacher that I had taught with previously. He got a learning assistant who I had admired and loved when I was a teacher there years ago. All my old friends were still working there. They'd followed our journey on Facebook. Like it really was coming home. And when you're putting your child with a disability into school and you're worried about it, what greater provision than having him put into a school where you...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds ideal.
Poor Cameron was like, I'm not sure about all this private school stuff. And I'm like, just trust me. And that was wonderful.
Yeah.
But even then, I began to see that Cody wasn't dealing with the social stuff as well as the other kids. And I'd say to the teacher, do you reckon there might be something there? Like, do you reckon it could be autism or something? And the teacher was like, oh, no, he's fine. He's just, a bit sensitive.
No, they're looking at kids every day.
They are.
But yet they weren't thinking it was autism.
Mothers know.
I'm never going to argue with that, yeah.
I never, ever question a mother as a professional now. Yeah, I just knew there was something different and a real struggle there. And grade 1, the struggles continued. Grade 2, they were really ramping up. He was really struggling to control his emotions at school. He was inadvertently hitting other children just in his frustration, like he wasn't going after them. But if you were nearby, you better duck. And so I was really getting concerned. And meanwhile, Cody was seeing a speech therapist through this whole time. And the amazing thing about speech therapy is it's not just teaching you how to pronounce your S's and your THs properly. It's actually a lot about social communication. So they teach you how to read situations.
Oh.
Yeah, I had no idea until I got into this whole world of, special education.
Yeah.
But they taught Cody how to respond appropriately to distressing situations. There's this thing called the catastrophe scale where you rate from 0 to 10 how upsetting something is. So 0 would be, you need to replace a battery on your watch, and 10 would be like your parents being taken away from you and you never seeing them again.
Mm-hmm.
So Cody thought that me not giving him lasagna for dinner was a level 10 on the catastrophe scale.
Oh, wow.
He genuinely thought that not getting his favourite meal was a level 10. And so you could sort of see this kid wasn't seeing
That's
the
a bit
world.
much.
Yeah. We also discovered in the afternoon that when we picked him up from school, he had to have afternoon tea.
Mm.
And he must have afternoon tea before he had dinner.
Well, that was part 2 of my conversation with special support educator Louise Griffiths, who's been sharing with us about her experiences as a parent of a child with special needs. As we've heard, her son Cody was born profoundly deaf, and as he got older, they suspected there was something else at play. Next time, we'll hear how Louise sets off to learn everything she can about being a parent of a child on the autism spectrum, and how this eventually impacts her career direction, as well as her desire to help other parents going on a similar journey. That's all coming up next time. Until then, I'm Eric Scadabo. So long, and God bless.
You've been listening to Real Faith, and if you have any questions or comments, you can send us a message through our website, realfaith.org.au. That's realfaith.org.au.
Real Faith is a production of Vision Christian Media.
This program is a production of Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, see vision.org.au.